Thank you, everybody, for joining in here. So I know we're getting close to the wind down on the day. We have this, and we have another session before the closeout. This is the session that I've been looking forward to the most because I get to talk to some of the brightest people in the nonprofit sector. So I'm really excited about this session. So today we have with us John Miller, who's the president and CEO of Guide Dog Foundation for the Blind and America's Vet Dogs. We got Neil Watson, the executive director of the Long Island Museum. We got Renee Flagler, who's the executive director of Girls Inc. of Long Island. And we've got Bob McGuire, the executive director of CP of Nassau County. So we've got a really, really powerhouse group here. They're here to answer any questions you have. So please feel free to ask questions, and we'll go from there. But I want to start off, guys, if you don't mind. And I'm going to start, Renee, with you. What did you do during the pandemic to ensure that operational effectiveness and fiscal viability? I know this has been a big issue for everyone. Everybody's experiencing an impact with respect to the pandemic. So what did you guys do in order to kind of keep your operations going and ensure that, the fiscal viability continued?
So the mission is always first. So the first thing we did was figure out how we could potentially pivot to find a way to continue to serve the girls that we serve, and knowing that they would need to be served in different ways as well, because there's a level of anxiety and uncertainty, and those are some of the things that we deal with in addition to our curriculum of bridging educational and skills gaps. So we kind of jumped in to do all kinds of research and figure out how can we still be there for them, how can we still serve them. We came up with a virtual platform. We checked out all the different virtual platforms to see what would potentially work best. With some of the sites, we actually continued to work on platforms that the schools were also using, like Google Classroom or either Zoom. And we tried our best to just continue to do what we normally do, which is give them programming, like I said, that bridges learning gaps. And also, we kind of had to up our programming in the areas of like mind and body. A lot of times they were dealing with isolation. They were dealing with just issues in the home, being home with parents and siblings all day, some of them having limited access to technology. So we did what we could to be there for them. And we actually were able to even reach a few more girls that were not part of the program, but were able to participate with us virtually. And it was a joy to just be able, that was the bright spot of our days, to be able to be there for them and hear their stories and, teach them things and do activities with them, but also be that ear for them when they were talking about the fact that they missed their friends and how this isolation was impacting them, and, things that were happening in the home, and anxiety, just the anxiety that they felt, and how the separation made them feel. And how they, and talk about wanting to cope with, strategies of how do I get through this, and what else do I need to do, and what can I do to manage this, and then just having that group of other people who's kind of dealing with the same thing that they were able to meet with on a weekly basis was really helpful. Fiscally, we really tightened our belts. Tremendously. We did everything we can. We researched COVID-19 relief funds and applied for whatever we were potentially eligible for, PPP loans. We didn't want to lay anybody off, so we just minimized, we just try to operate really efficiently with regards to how many people we needed, especially with our part-time staff, and what's the best way to utilize their hours. We changed things around in the schedule. There were trainings that were supposed to happen later on, and what we did was move those trainings up so that they can continue to get those hours until we figured things out. With regards to spending, just again, tightening that belt and being mindful of everything that we're spending. We reached out to our donors just to kind of have them be mindful and give them a status update of where we are and what's going on and what we're doing and how we're changing and how we're coping, and just being as transparent as possible. And being as smart as possible. I call it, flying the plane while you are building it, because you didn't know what was coming. So we had to try to be strategic, make really good decisions, and still not necessarily know the forward outcome, because, we hadn't been in this situation before. This was unprecedented. We couldn't go to historical data. So that has definitely helped us keep afloat. We still haven't
Okay.
let anybody go. We're good with that.
Sounds great. I'm going to ask a favor, guys. If you're not speaking, if you can maybe just put your microphone on mute, it'll kind of help with some of the distortion that we're hearing. Neil, I'm going to kind of throw that question over to you. I know you got some tough times as a cultural organization and not really being able to get people into your facility. What have you been doing in terms of kind of shifting your direction?
Sure. I won't mute my mic now, though. We closed down on the 13th of March, and we had, as we all did, had very short notice, and so we all had to go remote. So there's 28 people who work at the museum, and we all, continued to pay, and we had to set up all the locations that went back to the server. So there was a lot of technical issues for us, so we could access files and access each other, and so. That first couple of weeks was really just getting set up to be able to work remotely, because we didn't know how long it was going to go. As far as first thing we really did was to look at our schedule going out to 21 and 22, and so we took all the expensive exhibitions over the next years, because we really didn't know what was going to happen vis-a-vis. We could be closing in the middle of something, so we moved all of our shows of those notes into the next year. So we got rid of that, and we like Renee, we immediately just tightened the belt and started to look at the budget. We were also working on a June 30th, which is today's our last day of this fiscal year, and looking at next year, and just we had not cut anybody up until this point, because we also got PPP money. We were fortunate, and that was very helpful so we can maintain staff during a time when some can work. The grounds crew can't work, because there's no grounds. There's grounds there, but they can't come in. So they're starting to come back on that. As far as the kinds of programs we did, going from we're a visual arts organization, we are visually oriented, we have a very creative staff. What we did was to, just like Renee said, we went to a visual platform for presenting, and we started making films about not just objects in the collection, about the exhibitions themselves. And so we were able to do YouTube style films that we could then put out there on social media. And that really helped. We also put together an advisory panel to really try to find out what people wanted, and also how we could bring it to them. This is all new for all of us. And so, we have teachers, and we have arts educators and librarians, and have been very, and it continues, have been very, very helpful in guiding us into what kind of content the schools, and also when they come back in the fall. We have 12,000 kids that used to come, that have come in the past to the museum on an annual basis, and so that's probably going to change until we get a vaccine. So all of this to get set up so that we can go into the classroom when they're ready to accept us.
Hopefully that will be very, very soon.
I hope so.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Bob, I know you're also dealing with tremendous challenges with respect to dealing with your funding streams and the inability to deliver services to those who direly and desperately need those services. You want to talk about what you guys have been doing from an operational perspective and fiscal viability perspective?
Sure. When this began in mid-March, as it did for everyone, unfortunately it took us more by surprise than in retrospect. I think one of the questions we'll all be asking ourselves is, how do we make sure we're prepared for events like this in the future that we really didn't have the foresight to see. So when it hit us, first of all, we had already taken down a line of credit so that we would have cash. We applied for PPPs and were successful. But we have two operating corporations, so there were two separate PPPs that we needed to do. Our real first approach was, how do we save our guys? Our school closed, our day program closed. Those people went home, some of them to our residents. We have 19 residences in the agency, And when the first person was identified positive in one of my small homes, a home for 6 people, we quarantined that home. And that was the beginning of our learning experience about not just how to protect the people in the home, but also the staff and the staff's families. We had a few weeks before, probably late February, we had already put an edict out that nobody was allowed in the home, no families or anybody else, no foot traffic, reduced the possibility. In the first house, there was a staff person who had been in England, had no symptoms, but she was diagnosed. And so that quarantined that house. We had 5 people come with their toothbrushes and their sleeping bags, and they stayed in the house for 14 days. Fortunately, no other staff and none of those residents ever tested positive. But a week or so later, at my Bayville 48-bed home, 10 people went to the hospital, 9 of them were diagnosed. So once again, we had to quarantine the house and begin actually it was 6 weeks in which we had quarantined that facility. We also then have a school. How do we remote to the children and make sure that their education continues? And for those adults that live in their families' homes, how do we reach them? So Zoom became something I probably couldn't spell Zoom or PPE February 1st. I know how to spell them now, backwards and forwards. But it's been a godsend. And one of the things that we keep talking about is how will we operate when we come back? How many more remote opportunities exist that save people time and still accomplish the same outcomes of making sure that our children and our adults are well cared for and that our staff are also safe? So one of the things that we've done, it starts next week, is we're having an ionization equipment installed in our HVAC that purifies the air, the returning air from bacteria and from viruses. This has been a hell of a experience to find who are the saints and who are the sinners. There are far more saints than there are sinners. Unfortunately, some of the sinners control the purse strings. But the amount of people in the community that have reached out to us, we have a $1,000 check from somebody from Thailand, money from California, from Canada, Florida. People have been extraordinarily generous in supporting the organization. We did get some publicity because of the circumstances that we faced. And then my role was to keep our board apprised of what's going on. So sending them updates that were 2-3 pages long was part of what I did. I also did a video almost once a week for all our staff to give them an update about where we are, the issues, the challenges, and to thank them. Because at the end of the day, our staff have been heroes, and they need to be recognized as that. Unfortunately, in our industry, we're in the back seat. Hospitals and nursing homes are way ahead of us in regards to how they're viewed. But if we didn't exist, there'd be an awful lot of people that would have much more significantly depressing lives. One of the things that we're afraid of is that the state will take this opportunity to reduce services for people with disabilities, that there's been a slant towards let's have people in their homes and they'll do day program trips and things of that nature. And I think they're missing the fact that the socialization and the interaction that our fellows and gals with developmental disabilities experience when they come to a day program is far more enriching. You only have to take a look at the lifespan of people 30 and 40 years ago versus today. And it has expanded where people with developmental disabilities now have a lifespan of 70 years of age, where 70 years ago they had a lifespan of 22 years of age.
Nice. John, I know that you're in a slightly different scenario. You don't rely on the government funding the same way that that Bob does, and you're not subject to the same level of regulations, but you similarly have concerns with how do you provide the service to the individuals you need? How do you make those connections with the dogs? And what are you doing from a fundraising and dollar perspective?
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. It's very interesting hearing the other panelists on here. We all have threads of commonality, and there's some nuances, and the differences of our operation. But the first thing we were faced with when we had to close down is we had a group of people here who were from across the country to get their guide dogs, and so we had to get them safely home at a time where travel was stopping, and fortunately we were able to do that. The next issue we faced, from an operations standpoint, was we had about 260 dogs, primarily here on Long Island, that we had to find temp homes for. If we were going to be able to send the staff home and social distance and meet the state requirements, we had to find home for these dogs. And our staff and our volunteer community really stood up, and we were able to do that pretty quickly. I think within 2 weeks, we were able to find homes for all these dogs. And we're always looking. So anybody out there watching who's interested in temping or socializing a dog or helping puppy raise for us, we ask you to reach out. From a fundraising perspective, I would say to you, after the first week of sending everybody home, our marketing and fundraising teams were the first group that were fully able to work from home. So what we did was we put everybody on the phones, not to ask for money, but to check in, give updates about how the organization was going, to check in to see how they were doing and see if we could be helpful. And the trainers, certain trainers had dogs with them at home to train. Those who couldn't bring dogs home with them were on the phone with our clients to check in with them to make sure that they were doing well. Every decision we made from the first day we sent people home was to put ourselves in a position to succeed on the back end of this. And we don't know when that back end is really going to be over. We prepared probably about 15 contingency plans, and we do operate nationally, and we've been through them all. Right. So, we started planning to reopen by using the surrounding states as a potential opportunity to start training clubs. And now New York is in better shape than all of them. So, I would say to everybody, you're going to go through all of your contingency plans, and you just got to be prepared to be adaptable. But the thing that really is, stood out to me the most is, the spirit of our staff, our volunteers, our donors. They've all stuck with us, for the most part. We are going to be doing things differently, from a fundraising perspective. For instance, a run that was supposed to happen right after 4th of July, and that'll now be a virtual run. So there'll be a couple week scenario where people could help us raise money and run online, and so it goes from a local opportunity to a national opportunity. But still, we've had a couple sponsors leave to serve other charities. But everything we do is to give ourselves until tomorrow. And tomorrow, we start all over again, and look at the short term and really prepare for the long run here.
Well, it's good to know that you guys are doing a virtual run, because that's probably the only way I can run virtually.
Yep.
But having said that, you guys have experienced a lot over the last 3 months, and I'm curious to know, what takeaways did you get? What did you learn over the period of time where you guys, couldn't operate normally? What are you taking from this that you're going to kind of maybe incorporate into future operations? And Neil, we'll start with you on that one.
Sure. We are a visual arts organization. We're an experiential organization where you come to a museum, you go through the galleries, you'll see an exhibition, you see the carriages. So we've removed that part of a very rich experience for our visitors, and now we're dealing with the idea of a screen. And so I think that what I did learn, and I think I said it earlier, is the amount of creativity that the staff to a person they have really started to think differently about how we present the museum, how we present our programs. We're doing cooking demonstrations having to do with with the 19th century, foods of the 19th century. We're doing films that, as I mentioned, that are really digging into individual paintings and certain carriages that have real rich history. So I think that the way we're learning to use the platform, and we're also doing collaborations with. We had a pen pal collaboration with Long State Veterans Home, and we have over 24 participants where the veterans are paired with teenagers, with school kids, and they write they're pen pals, and they write back and forth to each other. It is such a moving program that continues. And also we do a lot of music here with Sunday Street, which is part of the university, and also Pro Musica. Right now, we're working with Sunday Street and how to do virtual concerts. And every year we do a Bob Dylan concert where there's it's a number of musicians come and they do tribute to Bob Dylan. They did it online, and they had at the end of its presentation, they had over 3,000 people viewed it. And I think that's a big number for us. So it's those kinds of things are really important for us to to continue on and push on.
I forgot I put myself on mute. Those are the things that you guys are going to do going forward too, right?
We're going to integrate them into the way we do business.
Bob, what about you? What sort of things did you kind of pull out? I know you talked a lot about it earlier, but what are you pulling out of the last 3 months, and kind of what are you going to do differently moving forward?
Well, initially, we already started some time ago reopening plans. As John said, every day brings something new to throw another twist into it. We think helping to clean our facility with using more different technology will give not only a better health circumstance for our children, adults, and our staff, but also give the confidence to families that they're in an environment that is as safe as we can create. But we also believe we're going to have to do this in small clusters. So that's the challenge right now, to figure out how do we separate the building that didn't get bigger but needs to be bigger, because we want to have smaller groups together, so that if someone were to get ill in that small group, we don't have to close down everything. We only have to be sending home those individuals that have been in that environment. So, that's not something we would have thought of before. Like I mentioned earlier, the fear I have, and we're getting plenty of feedback from our families, is they need to return to normalcy. And I hear I'm on a lot of statewide networking phone conversations, and where I'm hearing, it's going to be different. People aren't going to want to get on buses. People aren't going to want to be in congregate care. Well, I don't believe that to be true from the feedback I'm getting. It's not to say that people are ignoring the threats, but the question is, how can we create the transportation needs to get people where they want to go, so that their lives don't stop and their lives continue to be invigorating, and give them reason to get up in the morning, a reason to want to be somewhere and socialize and have colleagues and peers that they've known for years that they see again. So the challenge for us is to make sure that we do it incrementally to start, we learn from it, and then we can grow, hopefully, back to somewhat more of a normal status. In the meantime, maintain the remote learning that's going on and the remote contact. We have Zoom calls. We have 80 people on. So there are people seeing their friends and the people they've known for years. I think that's just very important to the mental health of our guys.
Right. When you talk about transportation, are you thinking that you have to do certain testing when people come to the site? Are you going to try to move some of that testing to where people get on the buses to be able maybe protect the people getting on the buses before they even get to the site?
Yeah, that's a good point, Ken. That's going to have to happen. I think actually the DOH is mandating it for anybody coming into the building, so we'll have that testing. We have it now in our residences, where anybody who comes to work is tested as they come in, temperature-wise, and ask certain questions. So
yeah, but I'm thinking like the students. Sorry.
The students with the students and the adults are different, because we transport all our adults ourselves, and we bought some sanitizing equipment. Static, my gosh, I'm forgetting the word, but we have an ability to cleanse our vans differently than before. The school, I'm not sure how the school districts are going to manage this.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking if we can move some of that testing to the bus stops or to when the consumers are being picked up, instead of having it done at the site. First of all, you won't have to transport them back, and second of all, you eliminate the contamination on the buses and stuff like that. Just a thought.
No, I think it's a good one, Ken, and I think we can do that when we're doing the transportation. When the school districts do the transportation for the children, and they do 100% of it, we don't do any of it. That's a challenge.
No, I understand. They need to change it, though. Yep. Renee, how about you? What are you taking from all? Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, it would be the right step is to every step of the way make sure you don't go to the next step and then say, where did it start? If you can stop it from your first step, the child gets on a school bus, gets a temperature check before they get on the bus. It's kind of a no-brainer.
I'm sorry, Renee, where do you see, or what do you see coming out of this that you're going to do differently because you learned from this experience?
several things. I'll give you like the top few. First and foremost, I do believe that virtual program will always be a component of what we offer to the girls. It's worked very well, and we were able to reach additional girls, grow the number of girls, being served, and offer them an alternative and a different way. And we were able to reach families more and parents. We had parent and daughter sessions, so we were able to kind of engage the community beyond the group a little bit more, and I think that's a really good thing for us. We've always wanted more parental engagement and more community engagement, and going virtual was a way to do that. It's also a way to add to our programming, for times where there's school breaks and different options. So that's one thing we love. Also, my board was amazing during this particular pandemic, and we communicated more, and we brainstormed more. We talked out issues, and not that they haven't been doing that before, but we were much more strategic. We were in touch quite a bit more, and it was really great to be able to leverage the leadership in that way on a deeper level. And of course, financially, a couple of things we picked up, and we've always tried our best to be extremely fiscally responsible. But when you have to cut certain ways and you really have to trim the fat, it makes you mindful of how much you can do and how innovative you can be all around. So that's definitely some strategies we want to carry into the future and beyond.
Awesome. I don't mean to have you go last again, but if you want to chime in and again, what did you guys learn from this experience?
Yeah, it's a lot of all the same measures. It's about health and safety. It's about making sure we have the security measures in place. But I think the piece that all of us share to a certain extent is in a human service business, you need human interaction, right? And our goal is to provide as much human interaction in a safe way as possible. Our model, for years and years and years has been group classes. I think one of the long-term implications for us is going to be probably more one-on-one individualized training where we institute safety protocols, but still are able to deliver service. We are also later this week rolling out our first ever trial virtual training of a service dog with a veteran up in Massachusetts. So that'll be a new innovation for us if we're able to get that process up and running. I think through all of this, it's incumbent upon leaders of organizations like ours to be adaptable, right? Because if anybody tells you they have all the answers, they're not being honest with you. It's about having your values set, understanding what your needs are, what the needs of your constituencies are, and then being able to be adaptable to serve those needs. So everything's on the table. We don't have anything pre-described or things we've written off, and we'll continue to try things as the ideas come forward.
Awesome. Bob, there's a question from the audience, and I think this probably fits you more than anyone else. Questions: with the absence of any forms of entertainment, recreational sports, concerts, nightlife, etc., do you see a potential increase in mental health issues as opposed to physical health issues?
I don't see how you could avoid that. Depending on where the person lives, they get stimulation or they don't. So there are families that are capable of being able to ensure the mental health of their family member, and there are others that have challenges that existed before this pandemic. So it's only compounds it. In our own houses, what we are doing is we're making sure that there are recreational opportunities, including getting people out of the houses, making sure that people are not just sitting home. While everyone said stay home, that actually is not the healthiest thing to do. It's get out and get sunshine and get fresh air, keeping social distance and being responsible. Staying home is not a healthy thing. And so I do believe, it answers directly to the question, that there will be some challenges, not just in my population, but throughout a whole society that didn't exist before.
Right. Neil said he's been sitting on that couch for 3 months. So, so we're all facing it. Anybody else want to chime in with an answer there? Okay. With New York starting to emerge from the pandemic, what do you see as the largest issues facing the nonprofit sector, and what does the sector need to do to move forward effectively, not just as a single organization, but as a sector as a whole? John, I'm going to throw that one out to you first.
Yeah, I think, the number one thing, the sector can do in each of our individual organizations is really understand your value proposition. What service are we providing to the public, and why is it necessary? And, as dollars tighten up, and governments have deficits, and people get laid off, you have to provide a real value to your donor and to your client. And understanding and being able to articulate your value in the marketplace, as executives who run these businesses, I think is paramount. I also think, now more than ever, you have to do your job well and provide good services. We don't have the luxury of, not getting it right. We have to get it right. We have to get it right every day. And I think, understanding the value, being able to execute, being able to tell your story, and you're really delivering for your clients is going to win the day for organizations and the industry.
Renee, you want to take that?
Yes. And so what we can do is continue to do some of the things that we did here, because being forced to pivot or be agile does create a sense of innovation to be able to move forward. So I think that sense of innovation, that sense of creativity is definitely something we have to keep at the forefront to just keep business moving, in a great way. One of the concerns we have, of course, is what is the status of other organizations who support us? So being mindful fiscally of, staying on top, staying in, keeping the belt tightened, and staying in touch with your funders, your community of supporters, to be transparent as far as what your needs are, and the impact of the work that we're doing.
Neil, what about in the arts and cultural organizations? I know I said sector in total, but I think the arts and cultural organizations, I think you're going to see that, they have a unique set of challenges and a different set of challenges than a lot of the other health and welfare type organizations. So where do you see, or what do you see that the arts and cultural organizations need to do to kind of survive, and not just survive, but to kind of be an important mix in the sector?
Boy, there's so many parts to this. We are all economic drivers for our communities, and I think that the staffing we have and how we keep people in jobs, I don't think we can lose sight of that, even though it's tough. Then that affects those people, and there's a cascading effect on the economic side. As far as, I think, collaboration, not just, we're going to work with people. True collaboration where they actually really do work. And I think that kind of partnership, we're going to all rise or fall depending on how well we play with each other. And so us, the schools are very important. With a number of people, the schools are important. But I think that learning how to work with them, given that people won't be coming here, we're a visual arts organization. We still want to be able to have that conversation, to share with what we do. We are also an object-oriented institution. We have a lot of paintings and sculptures and 19th, 18th, 19th century, 20th century objects that kind of talk about American life. So we have a lot of history parts as well for Long Island. So those kinds of, when I talk about, I'm concerned about the sector because there are a lot of this. Long Island has a lot of historical societies, a lot of history museums on very, very, very tight budgets. And so with people not being able to come sometimes because they don't have the social distancing space in their houses for, say, an 18th century house, has small rooms. So I think across the board, us trying to figure out how to work visitors into our equations, meaning opening, how are we going to do this safely? And we have a moving target for opening date. I don't know how everybody else is, but boy, it's for an organization that has coming, it's just looking at the state, what is realistic and what is safe. And so we're thinking, looking towards Labor Day. And also one of the things we're doing is we're going to go free. We're going to shut one side of the street. We have a two-side street. One side is the History Museum and former gift shop, and on the other side is the Carriage Museum, Art Museum, one-room schoolhouse. We're going to focus everything on the larger side of the street where the Carriage Museum is, and we're going to open our doors to the community and say, this is a time when I think that this is the time to do that. We want you to use this museum, and we need to do it responsibly. So that's why we think the timing of when we open is critical. So across the sector, I am concerned about places that will have a more difficult time.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to throw out a question. Bob, what are the top things that nonprofits need to consider once we get to the new normal, whatever that new normal happens to be?
So I think John said this before about making sure you're communicating with your constituents and recognizing how vast that pool is. If nothing else, this last 3 months has taught me how important it is to get to my staff, our parents, our funders, and our regulators, and making sure that we're on the same page. John also mentioned being able to tell a story. One of the challenges I think we all have is how do we prove that what we do is really important to the whole community, not just to the people we touch. And when we talk about our children and our adults, when I have 900 staff, we serve about 1,500 children and adults, and all of them have families. So they're being affected by how we manage our business also. And the community is also economically affected by the fact that we are a vibrant part of that. So the concern I have is dials are getting tighter. We're not getting paid, Ken, as you well know.
Yep.
Certain governmental and school districts that are not paying us. So therefore, we are stretched and stretched and stretched. And yet, what we do, the value of what we bring, we need to be able to tell that story to everyone and have our families, as everybody remembers Willowbrook. One of the problems that we have today is last year when I was in Albany, 5 of the legislators that I spoke with had never heard of Willowbrook. That scares us. That the story of how we got to where we are. New York State is the premier state in serving people with developmental disabilities. And yes, it's expensive. There's no question about it. But what we do is we save lives. That's important message that we need to make sure we continue to get out to everybody.
Yeah, part of the problem that you have is that New York State over the last 5 years, pretty much, it's been cut. And now that there's nothing left to cut, they don't understand that. They just continue to cut because that's what they're used to doing. So,
and the interesting
plot
I'll put on the table, we're getting cut. There's a $280 million cut that they have on the table right now for our industry. Not the state programs that run the same type of events.
Yep.
They programs, they're not getting cut. They keep getting increases every year for the last 10 years. And we've got no increases for the last 10 years. And they're cutting us.
And they're twice as expensive. Yep, I hear you.
They are, absolutely.
Yep. John, what do you see as the top things that the sector needs to consider now that Bob has kind of stolen all of your ideas?
No, it's all right. Well, good, Bob. As you look at it, he's right. We have communication is key. You got to be able to tell your story, and you got to show the world that you're making a difference, right? And if you're able to do that, my guess is support will be there. But I do think, as the economy tightens, you have to look at, and somebody was saying it earlier, collaboration. I think there's certain organizations that do certain things well, and that could be complementary to other organizations. And no one here is reinventing the wheel, right? We all operate in a crowded marketplace. In New York, I think there's over 40,000 registered 501c3s. And if you're not doing your job well every day and not telling your story and providing your value, there's 39,999 other organizations who will be happy to talk to Bob or Renee or Neil or any of us. And it's really about staying the course, being adaptable more than anything, but staying the course with communication, value, and then on the back end, you really have to deliver on your mission.
Renee, what do you see as kind of the top issues?
I stick with communication. We get the story out, making sure that people understand the impact, making sure that people understand the work and the work that and the impact that work has on the community, how it affects the community, both now and in the future. And I think collaboration, like I said before, is definitely going to be to show how there's going to be a sense of to come together in certain ways in order to really help to sustain and move the sector forward, because this impact has really, this has impacted everyone we do business with, every one of our constituencies, from funders to the people that we support. So I think it's definitely going to take some sense of collaboration as well to move things forward.
Do you think there will be some differences here? Because again, if you look at the panel that's here, you're the smallest organization of all of them. Do you think that the challenges are different for a smaller organization than a larger, or do you think they're pretty much consistent across the whole sector?
I think some are consistent across the board, but for a smaller organization like ours, I think some of the issues that we may deal with could be magnified just because we're smaller, and when you're smaller, you have to carry more of your weight. When you're larger, more people know who you are, you're more entrenched in the community, you've been around a lot longer. You may have a larger base of funders, a larger base of individual donors. So it definitely is a salmon swim, kind of going uphill. So I think there's some challenges. We're all in the same boat, but then there are some ways, as far as sustainability and everything, that the smaller organizations will have to work a little harder. We don't mind working a little harder. We've been doing it, but yeah, this is not going to stop anytime soon.
Neil, I know you kind of touched on a little on the answer to the last question, but if you don't mind discussing the top things that you think the sector needs to do, or what they should be considering once we get back to the new normal. If anybody even knows, if anybody can tell me what the new normal is, I'd be happy to.
That was one of my notes, was what is that new normal, because we haven't hit it yet, and we're it's certainly a moving target. I think John said it too. Relevancy, that you just have to be authentic and relevant to what you do. Your mission is obviously, and Renee brought that up, mission is key. And I think for us who are more public, safety and kind of how we roll that out is also an evolving and difficult. And when you start to dig down into that, like, how do you get cleaning products? What are the cleaning products you should use? How are you using bathrooms? How do they access? All these things are just quite stunning that you just did by rote 3 months ago, and now it's opened up to where every point of contact or touch becomes an issue. And so with doors, and with whether you have automatic doors, do you have so I just think that those kinds of issues to make, because it goes back to safety for us, that we don't want to put people at risk, which is why we keep looking at when we're opening. So like I said, I do think at the end of the day, collaboration and working with the community and really listening to what people need and want. We may not be able to give them everything. We certainly should be aware of what it is they might be looking for. Right.
So we're basically out of time. So I want to thank everybody for the time they put into this. This was excellent. As Tommy DeMisa said, what an impressive panel of finest nonprofit leaders out there. And I echo the sentiment. So thank you guys. Thanks for being part of this. And I'll see everybody who's participating on the next round. But thanks everyone for all your input. Take care.